Okay, so this is part 2, XUD11 Head rebuild. There's the old one. I've stripped it down since part 1, just because, as shown in part 1, the main problem with these are these little adjusters. Now you can just see they go square at the top there. The surface wears out, and they go square and worn. Also the result, I'm hoping we can focus in on there. You just see in there, it basically makes a groove for itself. So I've stripped down the older head, and between the two we've got some compatible hydraulic adjusters and rockers. So we've got a nice full set there unworn, which is really, really good. I've already taken off one of the exhaust valves just to get the spring compressor positioning right. I'll show you a bit more of that later. So this is about taking the springs out. So I put the head in this position. Not everyone would do this. I find it easiest with a clean surface underneath. I find it easier to apply the spring compressor, and I find it easier just to handle, really. You want a bit of space around the head. Without a proper head mount or stand, then I find this easier, just 2 chocks of wood. The bits I prefer to use, a tiny little screwdriver. A little bit of grease works quite nice, is like a little glue between the screwdriver and the collets, which we need to get out in a second, and a magnet. Obviously the same reason. If your little screwdriver isn't magnetic, all you need to do is get your screwdriver and just run, as you can see it is magnetic pretty well, is just run the magnet all the way down the length of the screwdriver, only one direction, and just keep going and going and going, and that'll make this pretty magnetic, which is obviously pretty useful. And a spring compressor. There are alternative methods for getting these little collets out here inside there. Some people will just put a big socket on there and smack it with a hammer. It's all good and fine, but then when you're looking down here for the collets, it's just sprung off in that direction, or when you're trying to put it back together, you'll still need a spring compressor. They're not expensive and they're well worth buying. So I'll just put this down now and show you how it goes, how it works, as I've been asked by a few just to show this. Hopefully you've got a decent enough view there. Right then, so it's pretty simple. One side of the spring compressor, the cup side, goes onto the top of the spring, and the other side goes onto the valve head. You do like that, and you push down the handle, bit of force, and she pops on, like that. Okay, so she's popped on a bit skewiff, but it's not too bad. Just hold it steady with one hand, and with the other hand, get your screwdriver, and there's your one collet. See that? Nice magnetic screwdriver. And then get the other collet out nicely. Here we go. Make sure you put them somewhere safe. So that's exhaust number 2. It goes in that box. And then nice and gently release the spring. Oh, nearly. There we go. That releases the spring and its seat, and that'll go there as well with that. And let's just gently push the valve through, and then we have the valve. You can see the valve is pretty sooted up. Later on in the head build we'll show how to get rid of all that soot. A nice simple method. Clean up the valves, we'll check for damage. They look pretty good, to be fair, and then those seats will need lapping in, which we'll show that as well. So there we go. So we'll switch to a time frame lapse now and do the rest of the valves. Okay, so that's all the valves out. Springs, collets, and the little washers you saw at the end there taken out. The eagle eye amongst you will notice I used a bit of a spacer on the end, on the cup there. It's only a cheap little valve spring compressor, this really. It wasn't even 20 quid delivered, I think. So it's not as adjustable as some can be. So because of the clearance issues, there it goes, because of the clearance issues between the face there and the springs, I've had to use just a little washer. It's a good opportunity now just to have a look at the ports, and you'll notice they are pretty manky in there. But that doesn't really matter because that will get cleaned out and port and polished anyway. So the next stage is to clean the head up really well, get those valve seals out, which I'll do in a second, maybe after some lunch, and then start port and polishing, and then we can clean it up, then lap the valves in. So there's plenty of work to do, and we'll come back to it later. So that's it for now. Ciao!